So we're going to take a look right now at landscapes. We've been spending some time looking at topography and being able to look at it on a map, but we're going to figure out what causes some of the different topography that we see on these maps and on the Earth. There are a few different things that affect what the landscape looks like. Factors that determine how a landscape appears are climate and the bedrock structure. So what the environment is like. Is it a rainy place? Is it a very dry place? So things like that with climate. But also the bedrock, what the rock is like beneath the surface. Those two things have a big impact on what the topography or a landscape looks like. A couple of other things that affect the landscape and how it appears is weathering and erosion. If you have an area that has a lot of weathering and erosion, then that will also impact the landscape. So we said climate is a factor. Arid or dry climate has little vegetation, and the rocks are going to be very jagged because nothing is wearing them down. You don't have the rain to smooth out the landscape. Whereas if you have an area that's humid or wet, a lot of times the hills are very rounded and smooth, and it's just going to have a more rolling appearance with the hills. So that's how the climate affects it, and it's basically what has to do with the amount of moisture that those places receive. The bedrock, we said, is another thing that affects the climate, or affects the landscape. Okay, it determines how the landscape looks according to its resistance to weathering. If you have a rock that is very strong and doesn't weather easily, it's going to stay there longer. So if you think about like a mountain range, if it's made of a very hard or resistant rock, it's going to stay there and its shape isn't going to change a whole lot, versus a landscape with very soft rock and soft minerals in it that's going to wear down quite a bit. The bedrock will also affect stream drainage patterns, and we're going to talk more about that later, but basically if you think about different landscapes and how the water falls over them, what is the water path going to look like? And we call those drainage patterns. And there are three main types of landscapes that we will be focusing on in class. Mountains is the first kind. And I mean, you guys can all kind of picture what a mountain looks like, but what makes that a mountain is that it has a high elevation and the rock is deformed, okay, due to great forces that occur when mountains are forming. An example right near us are the Adirondack Mountains, okay. So you can see we've got the different rock layers here, and they're kind of squiggly from pressure, okay, usually like continents colliding. That's going to create that feature, all right. So we take a look here. We've got some mountains, you can see, and on the side, right, you can see how the layers are uplifted, okay, or take a look on that side. I guess that shows it a little bit better. Okay, you can see how across it's not horizontal layers, and that is a feature of a mountain. They're not going to be flat, straight layers, okay. The second type of landscape, again, something that we are kind of familiar with in our area, are plateaus. These are medium to high elevation, so they're not necessarily going to be as tall as a mountain, but the rock beneath them is horizontal, it's flat. Okay, so you can see we've got the rock layers, they go up high, but they're flat, they're not deformed. And the example right near us is the Tug Hill Plateau. Okay, it's a pretty high area. If you've ever been up there, you can kind of see off into the distance for quite a ways because you're up in a pretty good elevation right there. So plateaus are another type of landscape. And the last type of landscape are plains. These are flat and low in elevation and usually have horizontal rock layers. Example, the Erie, Ontario lowlands. We don't really have a picture because it kind of looks like the plateau as far as the horizontal layers, but they're lower, okay? And all three of these types of landscapes are listed in your reference table, and that's on page 2. It's just above the map that we colored in class, and it shows the different landscape regions throughout New York State. And we actually are in the Erie, Ontario lowlands. And if you look at this right here, okay, you can see how you've got the mountains over here, and then it's lower and flatter. And if you look at the side, okay, those layers are flat and horizontal. All right, so they're going like that, but it's at a lower elevation than the mountains. Okay, so those are the three types of landscape regions that we have, and we're going to be looking at some more pictures of those in class.